Am I crazy? Marvin Harrison, the Dynasty Superflex 101? Let's talk about it.
Let's go.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dynasty After Dark, and I have a fun video for you guys today, and this is kind of going along with where we're at in the NFL season. We're going to be going towards a lot more of the Dynasty content as the season starts wrapping up. You know, a lot of teams out there are eliminated from playoffs at this point in time, but that doesn't mean you should give up hope. It's Dynasty, baby. We always have next year. We're basically the Cubs at this point if you're not making playoffs in your leagues. There's always next year. And luckily for us, the 2024 rookie draft class is so well stacked and so top heavy in terms of talent. There's a lot of good options out there. And today I want to make the case for why Marvin Harrison Jr. should be the Dynasty Superflex 101. And I'm going to have a video coming out later today for Caleb Williams as well. So I'm going to make both sides of this argument. So if you don't like this argument, you can go listen to my case for Caleb Williams. But I don't think it should be as crazy as people treat it that Marvin Harrison Jr. should be the 101 in a Superflex league. Now, before we get to that, you can find me over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin, the podcast at FF After Dark. And I apologize for not having a video last week, guys. You know, feeling a little bit under the weather. It's that time of year where you got a lot of stuff going on, and then there's also the illnesses and blah, 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 blah. But today's going to be this video. Tomorrow's going to be Caleb Williams, and then we're going to cap it off on Thursday with a non-Superflex mock draft for the 2024. You can go check out our Superflex mock draft just a couple weeks ago where I think Marvin Harrison Jr. did go number 1 overall, but you know, we'll be getting into a lot more mock drafts as the season goes on. So enough of that. Let me get into my argument for why Marvin Harrison Jr. should be the 101 over guys like Caleb Williams or Drake Maye in a Superflex. Now, there's going to be a lot of people out there that say, you have to take the quarterback number 1. It's Superflex. They're so much more valuable. But the problem with that argument is we've seen it a lot this year. Quarterbacks, you know, they're very valuable because there's very few of them that are very good for fantasy football. But man, and I don't want to say that I'm being reactionary based on this year, but the number of injuries and the instability of the quarterback position, even guys who were first round picks, you know, look at Zach Wilson, for example. He was the number 2 overall pick. You have Trevor Lawrence, the number 1 overall pick. You have Trey Lance, who was the number 3 overall pick. If you're not good enough for the NFL, these teams will get rid of you. They'll move on from you really quickly, much quicker than in the past. And, you know, you can make the argument, and I would probably be a proponent of this, that you know, the way that the NFL is treating these guys is not the best. You know, you got to give these guys a little bit of development time, but, you know, in the current day and age, everything is now, and it's leading to a less cohesive and less fluid NFL. And I think that that's a lot of the reasons why, you know, we've talked about in the past with our coaching episode. I think bad coaching is prevalent all over the NFL right now. You have a lot of bad offensive lines right now. And you also have a lot of bad quarterbacks who either don't get good training from the coaches or, you know, they're just not able to cut it in the NFL. But at the same time, you know, you have all these wide receivers. Oh, wide receivers are so deep. Why would you take 101 over a quarterback who is, you know, generational, for example? I just wanted to make the case here, and this is the biggest example of why that I would be taking. You can make the case for Marvin Harrison as the number 1 overall pick. Going back just 2 years ago, right? And I'm going back to Jamar Chase because, you know, there's very few guys that have vaulted that high in dynasty rankings as a wide receiver in their history. And, you know, Justin Jefferson is one guy, number 1 overall wide receiver. Jamar Chase is right there at number 2, number 1. Kind of depends on which one of these guys you would prefer. But I honestly think that once Marvin Harrison Jr. comes into the NFL, he's going to be right there as a top 3 dynasty wide receiver, kind of how Bijan Robinson, the generational talent of Bijan, put him at the number 1 dynasty running back. I believe the same thing for Marvin Harrison Jr. This kid is so freaking good. It's insane. It is literally insane how good this guy is. And once he gets out there, you know, with that high ranking comes very high standards, right? And this is the main case. You go back to 2 years ago, Jamar Chase. Same quarterback class as Trevor Lawrence. You know, we talked about him as the number one overall guy. We're not going to talk about Mac Jones. We're not going to talk about Justin Fields. We're not going to talk about Zach Wilson or Trevor Lawrence is the number one overall pick in that draft class. He's been the most consistent of these guys so far. And that entire quarterback class has been extremely inconsistent. Trevor Lawrence was the last generational quarterback talent that we've had in the NFL for the last couple of seasons. Trevor Lawrence going through. Now, you can make the argument that his rookie year with Urban Meyer, not the best situation for him, but he had 207 points that season. You know, he had a pretty disappointing season his rookie year, but he was a rookie, right? We got to give him a little bit of a pass there. Last year, much better, takes a big step up. 303.5 PPR fantasy points, right? Quarterback number 8 overall. He was much better. 4,100 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He had 291 rushing yards, 5 rushing touchdowns. Much better performance from Trevor Lawrence that year. Well, you flip over to Jamar Chase, and you got to take last year with a little bit of a grain of salt. He missed a little bit of time there, but rookie year, 303 fantasy points as a rookie. The exact same that Trevor Lawrence had in his best performance so far. Trevor Lawrence this year has taken a massive step back. He has not been nearly as good as he was last year, for example. And I think a lot of that has to do with the rushing. He doesn't have the 5 rushing touchdowns. He has no rushing touchdowns on the year this year. And, his yardage is down quite a bit as well. But we're halfway through the season. I think he'll get right around 4,000 yards again. But ultimately, he's probably going to finish as the quarterback number 12 to 15 at the end of the season, unless he really fixes something after this bye that they just went on. Jamar Chase, on the other hand, is on pace for a insane number of points this year. He's averaging 19 points per game, which is insane. He's the wide receiver 6 overall right now. It just tells you how good some of these wide receivers have been this year. But his rookie year, 303 points, an average of whatever that is. Same as Trevor Lawrence last year in his best season. Year 2, he had 241 points in 13 games, 4 less games. You average that out over the, a whole season, he's right there at 305, 310 points yet again. This season, he's on pace for around 340 points for standard PPR leagues out there. And again, he's just been much more consistent than Trevor Lawrence through 3 seasons. And I believe that Marvin Harrison Jr., he's going to go as a top 5 pick in the NFL. And it's going to be the same situation for him. Wherever they go, they're going to feature him, and he's going to be, shown to be the guy, the stud that they want to invest in and build their entire receiving core around. And I think he has that talent as well. Now you say, okay, that's just 1 year. Let's go. You're cherry picking here. Well, let's go to the year before that. Justin Jefferson. He's 1 year older he's 1 year more experienced, older in the NFL than Jamar Chase. Also, again, the number 2, number 1, whatever you want to say, dynasty wide receiver. Rookie year, 273 points. Second year, 329 points. Last year, 369 points. And then this year, with the injury, the quarterback situation, we'll see what he can do to finish out this year and see how good he actually is with not Kirk Cousins, because Kirk Cousins is, whatever you want to say about him, a very good quarterback. But we'll see what he does with Josh Dobbs in a lower caliber of quarterback prospect. Is he really quarterback proof? I believe so. So I'm not saying that to imply anything, but he was averaging 20 points a game this year as well through his 5 games. And he was just on an insane pace yet again. Justin Jefferson, great player. Jamar Chase, great player. You go to the quarterbacks of that class, and this is why it's funny, right? I can even pull up Herbert as well. These guys were all taken ahead of Justin Jefferson. Jefferson obviously was an anomaly. He was the 4th wide receiver taken in that draft class. He's playing out of his mind, and it's possible he was misvalued in the draft process. That's fine. But the 3 guys that went way ahead, they were all top 5 picks. Joe Burrow. You have Tua Tagovailoa and Justin Herbert. Now, Joe Burrow, slower, but, he missed a few games in his rookie year. 170 points, right? Not terrible, but averaging 17 points per game. Much further behind Justin Jefferson, even as a rookie. Second year, 323 points. Third year, last year, 365 points. Justin Jefferson has outscored Joe Burrow every single year so far. Every single year in a standard PPR league. You go to Tua. People love Tua. But are you trading Tua for Justin Jefferson straight up? Probably not. You go back to his rookie year. First 2 years, very rocky system. We'll even throw those 2 years out. Last year with Mike McDaniel, had the concussion issues, all that stuff, but 237 points in 13 games. This year, he's on a much better pace of, about 100 or 320 points roughly, but still well behind Joe Burrow in his best year, right behind Joe Burrow in his second best year, well behind Justin Jefferson in 2 of his 3 years as well. Then Justin Herbert is the other guy. Justin Herbert, his second year, his sophomore year, 395 points, 334. You could make the argument that Justin Herbert is the only guy of these 3 that you should be taking over Justin Jefferson. But even still, you can see last year, 290 points. This year, right now, he's on pace for around 360 points. So he's just cooking right now this year. But again, it's right there in line with Justin Jefferson. And the reason why I'm making this argument, Justin Herbert was not the 101 in that draft class. It was always Joe Burrow. And in the Jamar Chase class, it was always, for fantasy circles, it was always Trevor Lawrence and then, Zach Wilson or Justin Fields or one of those guys, always taken ahead of Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase in one of my leagues fell to 8 overall in a Superflex league because, all the other talented players came out in that draft class. Marvin Harrison Jr. is not going to fall that far in your rookie drafts, but I think he has the talent to solidify himself as a top 3 dynasty wide receiver day one. You look at the stats that this guy's put up in college. And all this, I haven't talked about Marvin Harrison Jr. once so far, right? Just making the analytical argument for why wide receivers over quarterbacks, if they're elite guys, can be made, right? But you look at Marvin Harrison Jr., what he's been able to do so far in college, and it's nuts. He's at Ohio State, obviously. His stats are insane, even with the likes of Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith and Jigba. He also had to play with, I'm forgetting the name, but he came out the year before both of those guys. It'll come to me in a minute, but in 2021, he was behind so many great players that he never got the opportunity to really shine and solidify himself until last year, took a big step forward, played a lot. He had 77 receptions last year. His rookie year, freshman year, 11 receptions for 139 yards and 3 touchdowns. 3 out of his 11 catches were touchdowns. Last year, 14 touchdowns on 77 receptions. This year already, he's got 1,000 yards. He's averaging 18 yards per catch, 59 catches, 12 touchdowns, and he's just insane. He's even got a rushing touchdown in there as well. And his numbers, this is with, again, an insanely loaded Ohio State wide receiver room. He's got Emeka Egbuka, who is also a potential first-round pick, and the guy is just, he's insane. Ohio State, they produce these guys. They are wide receiver U right now, despite what you want to say about them. And I think that, again, he's going to have the talent. He's got the pedigree. He's a generational wide receiver talent. It's going to put him as a top 3 guy. And I don't think it should be crazy for why he should be a number 1 overall pick, even in a Superflex league, because of the security that I think he's going to have versus the volatility. Now, I would say that the ceiling for someone like a Caleb Williams, for example, or Drake Maye, might be higher. You can see that with Justin Herbert, right? The ceiling for these guys, if they hit, might be higher than a Marvin Harrison Jr., but the floor is so much safer. You look at Tua, for example, in the Justin Jefferson class. Tua in a Superflex league was a top 3 pick every single time. Justin Jefferson was usually around the 109 to 110 in that draft class. He was taken in rookie drafts behind Jerry Jeudy. He was taken behind CeeDee Lamb. It was kind of a coin flip between him, Ruggs, and Rager. And, rest in peace, Jalen Rager. His career has not panned out like we wanted it to. But at the same time, like I said, he was not thought of to be as special as he was. But you have a guy like Marvin Harrison who is thought of as that special. His floor is insanely high compared to like even a Tua, for example, a Drake Maye. And if Caleb Williams, there is the off the field stuff, his attitude issue, I'm not saying that there is an issue there, but there's a lot of people out there that think that he might, him wanting the percentage of the salary cap and blah, 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 blah. You can make all those arguments that maybe he's not going to work out, but at the same time, his ceiling might be higher, but his floor might be non-existent. It might be Zach Wilson or Trey Lance, for example. So wanted to make the case. Let me know your thoughts on why I'm crazy, why I'm stupid. You can, I can take it. I can take it. Hit me up down in the comments below. You can find the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google. Leave a comment over there wherever you're listening, and I'd love to respond to you guys. Again, you can hit me up on Twitter at TDC_Calvin at FF After Dark for the podcast. And I'm excited. We're going to be getting closer and closer to that Dynasty content where, if you have any questions about what you should be doing in the offseason, if you're new to Dynasty, make sure you're following and hitting us up, and we're happy to help you guys. So thank you guys so much for listening. Have a good night.
And we all got dreams, we all want things, but what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be?